Health Specialist Volunteer Service to the Armed Forces and International Services, Amanda Idemiller, and Regional Program Director for the Service to the Armed Forces and International Services, Raul Galvin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, nice to see you. Long titles.
Long titles, absolutely.
But they have to do with veterans. And wow, what appropriate timing for you guys to be here. Yesterday being Veterans Day.
Absolutely.
And Raul, you're a veteran. In fact, you're currently serving as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
What's your service?
So I'm a civil affairs officer, and I'm currently a major in the 308 Civil Affairs Brigade, and that's out of Homewood, Illinois. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Major.
Major, yes.
And how long have you been?
This December will be 24 years of service.
No kidding.
Yes.
Did you think this was going to be a career?
You know, I did not, and actually I initiated my time with the Red Cross when I was deployed to Africa for Operation Enduring Freedom, Horn of Africa. There was a service to the Armed Forces specialist there at Camp Lemonnier that I was able to interact with. I got my first certification in CPR, first aid AED, and as an instructor as well. So that was my first interaction with the Red Cross overseas. And now being in the position that I'm in, it's interesting to see that we have our service to the Armed Forces specialists that do deploy and cover locations on military bases.
Yeah, clearly you've seen both sides.
Absolutely.
Amanda, you're like me. We're not veterans.
No.
But when you think about the Red Cross, you don't think about service to veterans. You think about blood drives and disaster response. How do you define what service to veterans is?
Well, that's a really good question. You know, the Red Cross has done a remarkable job building some programs to help veterans, their families, their communities cope with a number of different things. So the service that we provide are things like helping veterans and their families cope with deployments, reconnecting with their families after deployment, and then doing things like our mind-body workshops where we do a lot of resiliency training, skill building, trying to help people to cope with the many different aspects of their mental health, their spiritual well-being, their physical well-being, because all these things tie into your physical well-being. So we really try to create programs to provide tools to help people, their families, our active military, veterans, kids, teens.
And that's one of your areas of specialty is mental health.
Yeah.
And it's not just PTSD.
No, no. Hopefully maybe helping nip that before things happen. But because we give people in our resiliency skill building workshops, giving tools that people can use to manage stress, to kind of mitigate some of the overwhelming things that can happen, just coping. Things like relaxation techniques. I know some people say, oh, that sounds kind of silly, but honestly, some of the things we teach are all based in science, but some of them just give you in the moment coping.
Do those in the military, do they let their guard down and open up for help and services?
They do. So all of our programs are confidential. They're free. They're voluntary, so it's not that they're being told to go to this. We're there I'm a mental health specialist, but I'm there as a facilitator, not as a therapist. So these are completely, again, confidential, and we really try to create a space where people can talk freely about their experiences, where they can then practice some of the skills they're learning in these resiliency workshops.
So there's a lot of military active and veterans who are eligible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the overall how this is it fits in with the Red Cross mission and how it actually is, I guess, deployed within the Red Cross organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a bit ago about when people think the Red Cross, they immediately think biomedical services and blood drives and maybe a little bit of disaster response. But the Red Cross in general, we like to say, was born on the battlefield. In 1859, Henry Dunant, a Swiss businessman, actually traveled out, and he was at the Battle of Solferino in Italy during the Napoleonic Wars. And post-war, he saw a lot of the damage that was done to the military and soldiers out there that needed help. And completely neutral, regardless of what side everyone was fighting on, he started providing medical supplies and medical support to those soldiers that were affected in that battle. And through that time frame, in 1863, they came forward with the International Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, or Red Cross movement. It's interesting because the Swiss flag is red with a white cross in it, and him being a Swiss businessman, he inversed the flag with a white flag.
He stole the
and the red cross inside of it. So right along the similar time frame, Clara Barton here in the U.S., 1861, the Civil War was going on. And she did exactly the same thing without knowing what the International Red Cross movement was doing. And there was a big Civil War battles, and she was there ensuring there were medical supplies present, and she was supporting soldiers there, and they called her the angel of the battlefield. So through her service supporting the military here in the U.S. through the Civil War, she eventually went overseas, did some training overseas, ran into Henry Dunant, learned about the International Red Cross movement, brought it back home with the International Humanitarian Law, Geneva Convention thoughts, and around 1881 developed the American Red Cross and got the U.S. government to sign on to the Geneva Conventions. So a big push for the Red Cross is actually being born on the battlefield and bringing awareness on international humanitarian law. And a big portion of that as well being the services that we provide to military, of which the largest one is emergency communications. Mm-hmm. We're federally chartered to do emergency communications. Military members know that as Red Cross messages. So if something were to happen at home and your service member was deployed overseas or in training locally, through our Hero Care Network, families can reach out to the American Red Cross, and we will verify the information of the service member, of the incident that may be happening at home, and we deliver that message to that service member's command for that commander to make a decision on whether that service member comes home or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's through our Hero Care Network. It's a 24/7 operation through the Hero Care Network. You can submit a request online through redcross.org/SAF. We have a Hero Care Network mobile app that's good for iPhones and Androids. And we have a 24/7 number, which is 877-272-7337. So those are all ways that you can initiate those emergency communications. Also, through that same phone number, we can assist in identifying financial assistance through military aid societies. So each branch of the military has a military aid society and qualifications for financial assistance. So if that's a need for military members or veterans, they can reach out to the same number. And if it's not an emergency communication need, we try to see if they qualify for financial assistance. We help them through that process for each of those aid societies. And lastly, we have a critical community services through the same number, in which if there is a need that isn't covered by emergency communication or financial assistance, they actually send those needs back to our caseworkers here within the Michigan region, and our caseworkers take those cases and reach out to the families and try to identify local resources that may be able to assist them. So it's a great system.
You don't have to be deployed, you don't have to be active, you could just, you could have trouble, you don't have transportation, or you had a house fire or whatever. Mm-hmm. One of the things that the VA, and I think a lot of military service organizations struggle with, is that veterans don't know about what services are available to them.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's huge frustration.
Absolutely.
How about with you? Are military and veterans knowledgeable about what Red Cross has for them?
Right. So we do our best to get our information out to everyone. And we like to say we're with a service member from the moment they join the military through their time as a veteran as well. So almost everyone comes through the military at military entrance processing sites. There's 2 in Michigan, 1 in Lansing and 1 in Detroit. And each of those locations, we have what we call Service to the Armed Forces outreach available, either through videos or outreach cards or volunteers at the locations as well, informing families and service members of what the Red Cross does. And that's really maybe their first interaction with the Red Cross there. And we collect their information. Of course, we don't expect the information to stick with the families, but when we collect the information at those MEP sites, we do reach out again to the families with a phone call and an email to say, hey, we know we interacted with you at the Lansing MEPS, or your information was provided to us by a service member, and we want to make sure you're aware of these services. Please save our Hero Care Network phone number in case anything comes up.
Nice. Amanda, being a mental health and social worker and a counselor and a specialist, you've got to have some, and I know you can't speak specifically about success stories, but they've got to, there must be some things that you're very happy with that you've been able to help veterans or military with.
Absolutely. I think some of the events that we've kind of co-facilitated, if you will, you just see people practice some of the skills we teach, and they relax. So many people have come up to me afterwards and say, I know I can use this. This was really good for me. I felt myself release a lot of tension. I think I can do this. And sometimes they're just very short, little tiny things that they can do that are sustainable, small little sustainable steps that they can use to kind of decompress some of the stress they're carrying. Our military personnel, their families, they face such a unique set of challenges that having anything that can kind of reduce some of their stress and help them to refocus and re-engage with their families and with their communities, it can be just small little things. So when I hear kind of after a presentation or after a workshop, wow, this really worked for me. At the last event we did, someone said they had participated in one of the workshops, and they had heard we were going to be there, and they came up to me afterwards and said, hey, I learned this thing. This was really great. I used it at work. And I was like, okay, good.
So you gave a phone number. Though we have perhaps family members of active military and veterans, certainly I know, tuned in, and they can call that number, and you'll connect them with the services that they might need.
Absolutely, and I would even offer, if you're unsure if you qualify, just call the number and we'll work it out, and we'll work it through the system appropriately, and eventually, if it gets back to our caseworkers, we'll do our best here locally.
All right, let's get that number again.
All right, it is our Hero Care Network, 877-272-7337.
Great. Nice to see you both. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, on Veterans Week, and thanks to you for your service. Thanks for coming down. From the American Red Cross Michigan region, Amanda Idemiller and Raul Galvin.